I also think that people who are in a lot of pain can feel a little better after listening. Maybe we get them to laugh a little bit and
Yeah,
find
I
the
think laughing
humor.
at yourself is, like, the best thing.
It's
That's the
huge, and you can only do it when you know other people are in the same
Exactly.
boat.
Yeah,
That's
that's
for
the idea. Like the whole genesis of this podcast was like, first you want to explain or discuss stuff that's going on that someone else might relate to, but also to be able to laugh about it. And I
Exactly.
just felt like we want a place where people can have fun too with this whole thing
Yeah.
because it is like when you have a moment to step back and look at it, some of the stuff we do is really funny. Like
Mhm.
it just is. I mean, Alicia a couple weeks ago was in tears when I was talking about standing at a light switch for 10 minutes one time like this, like, and I had to, just didn't feel right. And it was 10 minutes of sitting and like, that is funny. I mean, in the moment I was in amazing distress and was really bummed out, but like,
I just picture you just because I know you, and I just like I know this version of Liam, but then we all
Yeah.
have our OCD version where it's like, "What the hell?" Like, picture me stacking furniture in front of the door because 'cause I'm convinced I'm gonna get murdered. Like, I'm just, like, pulling furniture down my stairs by myself, like, that is funny. So
It
being
is
able
it is
yeah.
funny. Once you, like,
Ouch.
get to the other side of it, you're like, "Why the hell did I ever do that?" Like, that doesn't make any sense. But you're right, it's funny.
it is.
Yeah.
It just is. It's funny and terrible all at the same time.
This is sad. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Liam. We both have OCD. And instead of spiraling alone, we decided to turn our symptoms into a podcast. You're welcome.
Here, we overshare real stories, laugh through the anxiety, and talk to actual experts who can explain why your brain keeps asking, what if I accidentally marry my cousin?
Whether your thing is hand washing, mental rituals, or just silently panicking during normal conversations, congrats. You have found your people.
This is a safe place, unless you're an intrusive thought, in which case, get in line, buddy. We're booked.
So grab a weighted blanket, cancel your plans for the 5th time, and let's dive in. This is the OCD Confessional.
And yes, we did check this recording 4 times before uploading it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the OCD Confessional. Alix Behar is a mental health advocate and content creator who openly shares her experience with OCD and anxiety. She has spent the last 3 years working in nonprofit community outreach, supporting youth through substance misuse prevention and early intervention. Alix is currently in graduate school, earning her master's in counseling, driven by a deep desire to support others the way she was once supported. We are so happy to have her here. Alix, welcome to the OCD Confessional.
Thank you
Welcome,
for
Alex.
having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat.
All right, let's dive in. What is your confession today?
So my confession is kind of ironic. It's that I used to confess every single thought that I had that I thought was, like, bad or, like, impure. So I would confess it to my partner, and it showed up a lot in, like, relationship OCD. So that was, like, my most, um, like, common thing that I did because of OCD.
Can you give us an example of what that would look like?
Yeah, so if I, like, had a thought about another guy, if I was just out and I saw someone and I was like, "Oh, like, they're cute," like, just a simple thought like that, which is very normal and very human, my brain would be like, "Oh, that means that you, like, cheated on your partner or you wanna cheat on your partner," and then I would go and, like, confess it to him, which is obviously not good for my OCD and can be hurtful as well, so it was just not good for either of us.
So you walk back in from your walk and you're like, "Hey, hon," how did you broach that subject with him? And then how did he respond?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we were together before we got married for, like, 4 or 5 years, so in the beginning, he could kinda tell when I was anxious, and I would start by being like, "Oh, like, I thought about something, and it's not really how I feel, but I feel like I have to tell you, because if I don't, like, I'm lying to you."
Mhm.
And in the beginning, he was, like, very, like, kind and patient about it, which I give him, like, so much credit for because I wouldn't have been if someone, like, did that to me. But as time went on, it got very, like, exhausting for him, just hearing some thoughts that, don't need to be shared. And that's kind of what led me into, like, therapy. A more intense therapy was the confessing, which was really impacting our relationship.
Mhm. I can relate to that. I don't think I realized that that was a compulsion. When I think back now, I'm like, "Wait, I would do that too." It's better some things are just better left unsaid. When did OCD first show up for you?
Probably when I was 13, so I'm 29 now. It started out as, like, contamination, so, like, I got sick at summer camp one year, and I ended up getting, like, a stomach bug, started throwing up, like, all of that, and it was kind of like a light switch, like, after that, I just started having major OCD symptoms, so, like, washing my hands until they bled, freaking out about touching doorknobs or anything that was contaminated, and so that's what got the ball rolling with, like, OCD symptoms.
And did you know what was going on in that moment? And were you able to talk to your parents about it, or what happened from there?
Yeah, at first it was really difficult because I didn't understand what was happening. I thought I was just like being normal and that like everybody acted like that. But it got to the point where I wasn't going out to dinner with family because I was scared of eating something and getting food poisoning. And I was making a big deal about how food was cooked for me because I was so scared about getting sick. And my parents really didn't understand it. Anxiety had never really come up. Um, in our family, or at least in this way. So it was very new to them, and I think they were trying to be patient, but again, they started to get frustrated as it continued, and it started impacting, like, other parts of our life and stuff like that, but eventually, as my OCD progressed, they became a lot more, like, understanding and came around that, "Oh, it's probably something more than just anxiety and something else is going on."
Did they put you in counseling, or what did they do at that point where they recognized, this might just be beyond the normal childhood anxiety?
Yeah, so I was really, close to my dad, and so he was kind of like my support system. My mom and I had a different relationship, and so it was harder for me to talk about things like that, but with my dad, I was very open. He, tried to find me a therapist, and we went, and I was not in the headspace to do exposure therapy, and I was young, and I didn't understand it, and I remember the therapist said to me, like, "Oh, like, the only way to get over this is to, like, face it." And I was like, "No, like, I'm not doing that." So I didn't go back, and I kinda just, like, was in and out of therapy for a while, and I never had the right treatment, so exposure therapy was never really brought up for me, and I think that's why it took a long time for me to finally, like, get better from OCD because I wasn't in the right, treatment for it.
When did you finally get into ERP?
I would say so I'm 29 now. When I was like 25, is when OCD started to get like really bad again and impacts my relationship. And I found me and my dad found like a local like outpatient center that like had like certain like treatment options depending on like where you were in your journey. And so that's kind of when it started for me.
So you would say your main subtypes are contamination. It sounds like emetophobia was in there somewhere,
Yeah.
and then relationship OCD. Did you find that at different times in your life, one of those was the strongest, and that was the thing that you were, really focused on and anxious about, and then it would move to something else? Or were you dealing with all those at the same time?
Yeah, I think it definitely came up at like certain points in my life. So when I was younger and I wasn't like in a relationship, um, emetophobia and contamination were the forefront because that was really all that was like going on in my life. And then I went to college and, I started dating, and that's when the relationship OCD started to come up a lot. And it's always been like my most prominent theme. I've had like other themes as well, like, scribblosity and stuff like that. But relationship OCD has kind of always been the biggest one for me.
Did it show up in friendships too, in high school and in college, or was it more so just focused on romantic relationships?
Yeah, I can't recall it ever showing up in, like, a normal, like, platonic friendship. It could have been, and maybe I just didn't realize it, but, it never really just, like, affected my friendships, so I assumed it wasn't really, like, relationship OCD, but it was just always clear when it was in a romantic relationship that it was coming up.
And were you able to develop friendships with the contamination stuff and the emetophobia? You can't go out to restaurants. My guess is, hanging out with your friends at that age was probably tough because you're worried, oh, does someone have a cold? Do they have the flu? Were you able to form friendships and have kind of a normal childhood, or did you have that experience that a lot of people with OCD do where that was kind of taken from you?
I think in some ways, like I had my group of friends who I kind of had at the time who kind of just like stuck around even though I was struggling. But then as I kind of got older, like I said, this started when I was 13. I kind of just did exposure therapy on myself. Like, I got
Mm.
very frustrated with myself and how it was impacting my life that I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And I started like slowly like trying to face my fears and break those habits. And I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. Like, I just was like, this is probably like the only way to get better. And so I stopped washing my hands so much, didn't like use tissues to eat everything. And then, things started to get better and I kind of started to heal from it. And I don't really struggle with it anymore to this day. So I'm really grateful that. And I think over time, I showed myself that I can touch doorknobs, I can not wash my hands all the time, and I'm fine. Like, I'm not always getting sick from it. So those fears, they would just weren't relevant. Anything can happen. I can get sick, but it's not worth me losing so much of my life for.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody right now in the thick of it who is dealing with contamination, OCD, during those moments when your body is having that physical response to the exposure?
I think that's the hardest part is just like the response prevention and the really sitting with that like difficult feeling and like nobody wants to deal with that. But I think just giving yourself grace and giving yourself compassion that you don't have to, get better in one night or, a couple weeks. Like it's going to take time and with hard work and with doing the exposures and really like riding the wave as hard as it is, even if it's just like a little bit at a time, like delaying a compulsion like 5 minutes or like 10 minutes, those are still wins. And acknowledging those wins and just knowing that you're not alone and that there are people out there who are going through the same thing and they're probably just not talking about it. So I think just really giving yourself compassion is so important and not being so hard on yourself.
Yeah. Progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're married now, which
I
means that
am.
you had a lot of exposure to some of the relationship stuff that came up. Where are you now with that? And congratulations.
Thank you. We're actually like 6 months married tomorrow, which is crazy that
That's awesome.
it's flown by. I'm in such a better place now. Like, I still have normal human thoughts that come up that I used to take as like urgent and like I had to respond to them. And now I'm just very much like chill about it and like not giving it attention and knowing how OCD works, that if I give it attention, it's only going to grow and get worse, and kind of knowing the things that I have to do to keep it managed. And I think I've just gotten a lot better at like sitting with discomfort and like the unknown.
Yeah.
I want to dig into the relationship OCD stuff a bit more with you. So, you've said that at one point it almost cost you the relationship. So, can you tell us how it got to that point?
Yeah, so like I said, I was around like 24 or 25. We had been dating like maybe a year. And as I mentioned, he was very kind and like patient with me the first full year and knew I had anxiety, but didn't really know like what OCD was, never really experienced it before. And it just got like really difficult because I was confessing all the time and he was already going through a lot at the time with like work and it was, like a year after the pandemic. So there was just a lot going on. And it was kind of like he wasn't, like, filling his own cup, he was just pouring for mine, kind of in the best way to put it. So he was spending so much time trying to reassure me that, like, he wasn't taking care of himself and kind of neglecting his own mental health. And so he basically just said to me, like, one day, he's like, "I can't continue on if this is how it's gonna go." And I had at that point, I had never, like I said, really been in ERP before, so I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm gonna lose this relationship." And so somehow we came to like an agreement that if I tried to get better, that he would stick around. And as long as I'm like making that progress and, trying, then he'll stay and like, I'll get better. And so we were kind of like in a limbo for a while because I was like, okay, well, what if I don't get better? That means you're going to leave me. So in my mind, I was like, I'm growing more attached to you and spending all this time with you, not knowing if we're going to end up together. And that was like a
The
whole
uncertainty again, that probably sent you
it was a
spiraling.
whole
Yeah.
'nother level of anxiety where I felt like I couldn't, like, be open or be myself because I was like, "Okay, like, you're only gonna get more attached." But
Right.
luckily, I went to therapy, he was very supportive, and it worked for me. It did take time. I didn't start seeing progress until, like, 6 months into exposure therapy, but I think he was seeing little growth along the way, and that's kind of, like, kept him, like, going and knowing that like, I was making I was doing all the right things.
Can you give us some other examples of how it was showing up? So, you've talked about how you're out in public, you see an attractive man, and then you go home and you confess to your boyfriend, like, I saw this attractive guy, and you're confessing, almost trying to take that anxiety off of yourself about what that means. That's your compulsion, is the confession. And so we've talked a lot on this show, Alicia and I, about how to be with someone with OCD, especially if it's relationship OCD, takes a really strong person, because if you're on the receiving end of that, let's say you're the boyfriend, you don't even know that she has OCD, but she's just like every other day walking in and being like, I saw this guy who's really attractive. I'm like getting feelings for the. You'd be like, what the hell is going on here? Like,
Yep.
how every day you're going out and seeing, so I'm so curious about how he was receiving it, because did he have a sense that, like, okay, this is obviously some sort of, you know, psychological issue that is playing out here? Or did he worry, like, no, maybe she really doesn't have very strong feelings for me if she's constantly seeing these other people and finding them attractive?
Mhm. Yeah, I would love to know more. I'm gonna have to talk to him about this now and just see where his head was, but he was just always, like, so calm, like, never raised his voice at me, never got super angry at me when I would tell him this stuff, which is crazy because, like you said, like, if it was the opposite and he was telling me stuff about another girl, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, like, why are you with me? Like, you don't really love me." So
Mhm.
I don't know how he dealt with it, and, I think maybe priming him to the fact before the relationship that I had anxiety maybe helped. Maybe he, like, realized that, like, oh, a lot of it is probably just, like, being anxious, and that's where it's coming from, and I think I always kinda, like, said to him, like, "I don't want these thoughts, like, they're just coming up, and, I love you, and, like, I wanna be with you." So, maybe that was reassuring to him in some sense. I really don't know, he just was a saint and, like, so good with me. But yeah, so I just think he's, like, honestly, like, if it was any other guy I'd been with in the past, they would've, like, broken up with me and wanted, like, nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I'm just I we need to have him on the show, because I need to pick his brain about how he was reacting to this. How else was it showing up? So, just by way of background, I also have relationship OCD. Mine, and Alicia has had a taste of this too. Mine tends to be a bit more about my worries that they're not in love with me, as opposed to the other way around. Like, oh, am I attracted to other people? That isn't, mine goes the other way.
Mhm.
I'm curious how else it was showing up for you beyond, oh, I saw someone, I find him attractive. Is that a problem? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it was, like, also I started avoiding, like, having conversations just with guys in general.
Hmm.
So, at the time I was working and I worked at a gym, and so there was a lot of, like, male instructors, and every time I would, like, talk to them, I would go back and, like, confess or ruminate and be like, "Okay, like, what did I talk to them about? Did I give them, like, too much attention? Did I, like, say the wrong thing?" So I started, like, avoiding, like, men for a really long time and just, like, wanted nothing to do with them because I thought, "Oh, like, you know, I could be doing something, be flirting with them and just not remember or stuff like that." So that showed up a lot. Again, it was a lot of me like not being present in the relationship with my husband, at the time because I'd be so in my head and we wouldn't have like any like just like chill, like fun, like hanging out time because anxiety would always come up. So it was just a lot of rumination, a lot of like avoidance. Yeah, so those were kind of my big ones, like not talking to even just friends who were guys, stopping like those friendships. So yeah, that was a big part of it.
And it's so shitty and unfortunate because we all know that OCD attacks what we love and value the most. And if you're in love with your partner, and the last thing on earth you ever want is to split up, and your OCD will cause that very thing. That sucks. It's like, unless you get a firm grasp and again have a partner that can tolerate some of that stuff, it's really unfortunate, but I'm glad you guys worked out and he had the confidence and everything to stick around. Okay, so you have built a really impactful Instagram page. I love it. I love the way that you articulate what you're feeling and how you connect with your audience. What inspired that journey and what gave you the confidence to share openly about your struggles?
Yeah, honestly, it just started as a way for me to vent and kind of get my feelings out. I made that page when I had just started therapy. I just started exposure therapy, and I felt like I was the only person in the world having these thoughts. I had
Mm.
never really talked to people who had OCD. I don't really have people in my life who have OCD. They have anxiety, just general anxiety, but some of the thoughts I was having, and the biggest ones were about the cheating OCD and the relationship OCD. I was so sure that I was the only person in the world who had those thoughts. So when I started, like, posting about it anonymously, like, I didn't have a picture, I didn't have my name, it was kinda just like a diary. People started, like, responding and being like, "Oh my gosh," like, and I talked to this girl who I'm still friends with now, who I met online, who says, "Oh my god, like, I had those thoughts too." And it was like a whole, like, weight lifted off my shoulders, and I was like, "You're lying, like, there's no way." Like, I thought I was the only one, and I thought I was a terrible person. She's like, "No, like, I have the exact same thing." And so I started writing about it, and people started responding and saying, "Can you share more on this?" and all of that. So it really just started off as, like, a diary because I needed to vent, and I didn't really have people in my life who understood it.
Yeah. It's so important. It's also maybe a sneaky way of getting that reassurance that we need,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
It
You're
can be a
like,
slippery slope.
"Someone tell me." Yeah, it can be. Like, I just made that a negative, I'm sorry.
You're right. I get it. No, I understand.
You're confessing, basically, is that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
just
that's all we're all
But
doing
I
on
think
here.
just, like, at the time, I needed to hear that,
Yeah.
I wasn't the only person, and my therapist at the time told me, and, they're like, "Obviously, you're not alone," like, this is why we're in business because people have OCD, like, and there wasn't that many people in the treatment place that I was at the same time. There were, like, 2 other people, and they had very different OCD. It was, like, typical, like, just right OCD. So, again, this was, like, all very new to me, and I've never heard of it before. So when people started messaging me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm actually not alone, and this is amazing that it's not just me."
No, it's incredibly powerful. Maybe one of the most powerful tools in recovery from OCD and probably most mental health issues is
Mhm.
community and finding other people who are going through it. I want to talk to you a bit about your time in recovery. So, when you finally decided to go, it was because your relationship was in danger and you guys had decided together that you needed to do this. What exactly did that look like there? How were they exposing you to that? And how did that eventually help you get better?
Yeah, so I remember my first session was, like, the typical, like, making a hierarchy of, like, all the things that, like,
Mhm.
brought me anxiety, and so we would start really small, like, just watching movies or listening to music about cheating and, like, affairs and all of that. So a lot of my exposures were just watching movies where people were cheating on each other.
Liam's
I
favorite thing.
I have the same
He hates
exposure
it.
therapy
I hate
all
it
the time.
too. It's
Yeah,
the
so
worst.
it was
You're
a
like,
lot of
"Yep,
that.
that's" you feel like you're giving them ideas.
Yeah.
You're like,
So
"You're not allowed to watch this because 'cause you're gonna get some idea."
exactly. It was just, like, a lot of, like, sitting with that discomfort and not thinking and applying it to my own life. "Oh, like, have I done this before?" So it was that, and it was a lot of script writing, like, writing, like, my worst case scenarios, reading them back to myself, reading them to my therapist, recording it, listening it back, like, over and over again until I was kind of just like, "Okay, like, yeah, obviously this is BS," like, and I was able to, like, separate myself from it, and it took a lot of time, and my therapist would have me do some, like, really weird stuff, honestly, that maybe I don't know if I would wanna do again. But I guess that's the whole point of, like, exposure therapy, and it obviously worked, so she knew what she was doing, but at the time, it can feel so, like, counterintuitive and, like it's not working because you're doing all this stuff and you're teaching yourself that you have to sit with that and, like, you can't react to it. So,
Mhm.
it's painful at the time, but I can see why, it works
Can I ask
when.
you this? When you were going through that, how did your therapist tell you to handle discussing it or not with your husband or boyfriend?
Yeah, so they told me, like, if you get the urge to confess, the goal is obviously not to tell your partner. Like, if you really, really feel like you have to, like, tell a friend or write it down in your notes app and then, like, just move on with it. And then if it came to the point where I felt like I had to confess to my partner, leaving out certain information, not fully confessing, so kind of like making it imperfect, as a way to kind of, like, still not completely give into the OCD and practice, like, some response prevention.
That's so interesting because so I'm in ERP right now for relationship OCD and a couple of other subtypes, but One of the things my therapist said is you are not to discuss this treatment with your wife. So my wife is a clinical psychologist, which complicates things a little bit, but so much of the way I dealt with my OCD leading up to this moment was to confess to her what was going on with me. I didn't realize that was a compulsion in and of itself. But basically, what happened is I spent so many years being silent about my struggle that once I finally opened up to my wife, which was a great decision to be vulnerable with her and say I'm really struggling because it led me on a path to recovery. But it was kind of one of these things where it felt so good to open up to her when I finally did that it just became a floodgate, and it was just verbal diarrhea all the time of like, now I'm
Mm,
thinking this, help me with that.
yeah.
I'm thinking this. And eventually my therapist recognized that is its own compulsion. You are constantly going to her for reassurance, and you're
Mhm.
doing it sometimes in direct ways, sometimes in indirect ways. But for the course of this ERP, you're not to talk to her about the ERP. You're not going to tell
Mhm.
her what it is that you're doing for an exposure, because what you're doing is trying to get reassurance and you're
Yeah.
messing. And
Would
so
you guys did you find yourself going, "I really wanna tell you this, but I'm not supposed to?"
yeah,
You
like,
would?
because she's so curious as a clinical psychologist, like, she'll
Uh-huh.
pretty frequently be like, "Hey, so how was therapy today? What did you guys
Yeah.
do?" And I'm just, "It was good."
And she's your best friend, you wanna share that stuff
Yeah.
with,
That's
but
true.
And that really sucks is that it does kind of rob you of that dynamic of, you wanna be open and share this thing. I mean, ERP is gonna be one of the more difficult things you're gonna do in your life.
Mhm.
And you and it's the most one of the most impactful things you're gonna do in your life, and of course, you wanna share that with your best friend and the person
Yeah.
in whom you confide the most in every other aspect of your life, but you, like, can't. I literally sometimes have to, like, physically bite my tongue,
Mhm.
and so
Yeah.
it's an
That's tough.
interesting thing. I was curious how you handled that in your journey.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember my therapist saying the same thing, like, "You cannot tell your partner the exposures you're doing," and it just felt, like, so heavy because I was like again, I was like, "Well, I'm doing these things, and what if I am actually cheating? What if I'm going too far with these exposures?" And I wanna go and tell my partner, but I can't. So, I think he got really good at, like I also have, like, diarrhea of the mouth where I overshare everything,
The medical
um,
term.
and
You're
so
in good company, Alex.
he got to the point where he was, like, stopping me. He was like, "Nope." He was like, "Is this a confession?" And I was like, "You're right." And so he'd be like, "I don't wanna
Good for him.
I don't wanna hear it." And, like, in a gentle way, but
Yeah.
he knew that I wasn't supposed to be sharing my exposures, and I still haven't shared them with him today, not because, like, I couldn't tell him, because I am at a point now where it would be fine, but again, like, I just think I've gotten to the point where I don't need to. Like, I'm confident in our relationship now, but like, you're right, it's so hard because that's your best friend, that's the person who you wanna go to, and for all relationships, even, like, healthy relationships without OCD, there is, like, a reassurance that is supposed to be part of the relationship and that every human being, whether they have OCD or not, desires and deserves. So when you have OCD and you're already going for reassurance, it's like, where do you draw the line? Like, what is normal reassurance or what is bleeding into OCD? So it's a very, like, complicated thing that I'm still figuring out, and I'm sure you're still figuring it out too. Like, it's just kind of like learning as we go.
Yeah, it really is an ongoing thing. Do you feel like you meet the criteria right now for OCD, or are you
I think right
suffer?
now
How
I
do you
I think right now I probably don't meet the criteria. I definitely have felt in the past couple weeks just some, like, normal work stress that came up and, little OCD tendencies that started to come back, but I'm very good now at, like, acknowledging it and figuring out how OCD shows up for me now. But, yeah, I don't think I would meet the criteria. I think for the most part, like, I'm very happy, and, I know now when OCD comes up how to kinda, like, acknowledge it, and I really love, like, radical acceptance and just, like, accepting that, like, these thoughts are gonna come up, like, it's a part of being human, and I don't have to give them attention, and so I think I've gotten really good at kind of, like, not stopping OCD, but just accepting it for, like, what it is and not letting it dictate my life anymore.
That's awesome. That's incredible for you that you're in that place. You now are studying to help other people with OCD. So tell us a little bit about that. What brought you to that decision and where you stand in that journey?
Yeah, so I kinda always wanted to be a therapist, but I think I wanted to be a therapist when I was struggling so badly with my own mental health that I had some, like, outside voices be like, "Oh, like, do you think you'll be able to handle other people's problems? Like, you get very emotional and, like, attached to situations and people. Like, are you strong enough to handle that?" And they didn't mean it in, like, a mean way. I think it came off kind of hurtful, but it was, like, valid at the same time. Like, am I able to, not take home other people's problems?
Mm.
So I just kind of was like, "Okay, like, I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna choose this and just go a different route and, still help people in other ways." But it wasn't until I was, talking to my dad and I was just telling him, like, my long-term goals and how I just really wanted to be a therapist, and especially for people who have OCD. And he's like, "I just think you should do it, like, just go back to school." And I was like, "Oh, well, what if, I can't handle people's problems?" And he's like, "But you're in therapy yourself, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can handle it. Like, if you have a problem, you go to your therapist and you talk about it with her." And so it was kind of like very last minute, and I applied like in December, right before, like, the semester started in January. And I got in, and the program worked really well for my schedule. I was still able to work full time, and do stuff for school. And even like I just had to film a mock session yesterday with my friend and be the therapist for 30 minutes, and it was so intimidating and like so scary. And I thought, I used to be like, "Oh, being a therapist would be easy. Like, I got it. Like, it's just a conversation." And although it is, it can take like some time for those skills to actually like stick and like implement them. So it was definitely, it's been a really fun experience, but it's been challenging, but I expected it to be. So I'm happy, and I'm excited to keep learning and finally be able to do that one day.
That's awesome. You should feel very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
That mock session, what disorder did you give your roommate?
So it wasn't, any, like, diagnosing, it was more so I was like, "Oh, like, how was your week?" And she told me about stuff that has been going on in her life, and it happened to be, like, real stuff, and she's one of my best friends, so we kind of just have that relationship where we can talk about it. And, like, I had to really be an active listener and, like, ask her open-ended questions and use the skills that I'm just learning for the first time, in a couple months, and, like, implement them, like paraphrasing, summarizing, like a reflection of content, and like repeating it back to her, and just, being an active listener. And in theory, like when I read about the stuff in my textbooks, I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I got that." But then when it's like time to actually do it, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what if I forget everything?" And so it's a little scary, but it's just the beginning. So
Yeah,
I still have
very
plenty of
different
things to
to
learn.
read about it versus doing it. You
Yeah.
gonna also get trained in ERP as part of that?
So what I'm in now is just like a general counseling program, but I hope to, once I finish, to like actually start like getting specialized in ERP and OCD. That's like the main, like the final goal. So yeah.
We need more ERP
Yeah.
practitioners, and especially ones with lived experience, because I think
Mhm.
there are, of course, ERP specialists who do fantastic work who don't have lived experience,
Yeah.
but I do think that it can just bring a little bit of something different to the table when the person who's giving the ERP can relate to what the patient is going through, even if it's just on a level of, like, understanding the amount of pain that they're in that moment. And I don't know, I just think there's probably something a little gained by having someone who's gone through what the patient is going through.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I all my therapists in the past, I've had some really good ones. None of them, at least that I know of, has had OCD. And my current therapist, I don't think she has OCD, but she's phenomenal. But I get what you're saying. Like at my point in my journey, I'm good with that. But somebody who is just starting out and maybe feeling really alone and like they don't have anybody to talk to, having a therapist who understands it and can be like, "Yeah, I came out the other side," can be really powerful.
Mhm.
Love that.
Do you view recovery as a destination, or do you think it's an ongoing practice?
I think it's definitely an ongoing practice. I wish I could say that, like one day I'll wake up and I won't have OCD anymore. And, right now I have it, but it's managed. But I think there's always going to be times where it's going to show up. And I just kind of have to use the skills that I know and, continue to choose recovery. I don't think it's like there's a cure for OCD, unfortunately. Hopefully there is, at some point in the next 20 years. And then we can all just be great and happy without it. But, I think for any mental health condition, it's like an ongoing journey and, like, it gets better, and that doesn't mean that you can't have, like, a beautiful, fulfilling life. It just means that there's gonna be times where it acts up and other times where it doesn't.
For those times when it acts up, what are some daily habits that have really helped you stay on track and stay in that positive mindset?
Yeah, I think just reminding myself that I've gotten through something difficult before and I can do it again. Just like little things like working out, like walking really helps get me in a good mindset. Making sure I'm scheduling therapy sessions as I need them. And just really practicing like self-compassion and giving myself, credit for everything that, I've been able to do, and that I'm in a good place right now. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that my therapist gave me that helped me so much was that it's not about having like 0 bad days. It's about having more good days than bad days. And I can say now that like when I have a bad day, I can realize that it's just a bad day. Like it's not a bad life. Like I've had so many amazing things happen, and
Yeah.
I should be proud of myself and try not to just let one day turn into something like more than what it is.
I love that, and to not feel guilty for having that bad day, right? And just let
Mhm.
yourself just feel it all and know that it will get better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that takes practice because when
Yes.
you're in the bad day, the logic part of your mind goes, I know that by tomorrow or a couple of days from now, I'll be out of this. But for whatever reason, it feels permanent in the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then someone comes in and says, "Oh, it'll get better," and you're like, "You need to stop shocking right now."
Along those
Yeah.
lines, what's a big misconception about OCD that drives you crazy on the regular?
I think probably what most people who have OCD would say, just hearing like, "Oh, I'm so OCD, like I'm really organized and I really like things a certain way." Even like when I work with a lot of kids and teenagers, and they'll throw that word around very lightly, and inside I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like I have so much to say to you." But I have to like reel it in and be like, "Okay, like they're kids and like, they might just not understand." But I just hate when people throw around OCD and, depression, whatever it is, as if it's just like a simple, like a little thing
Mhm.
that, doesn't really affect you. For somebody who has it, you're like, this has impacted my life so drastically. For you to reduce it to like a simple word and adjective, it makes me so angry. And I used to get so angry and like start fights with people about it. And through a lot of therapy and, talking to people, I'm like, I just have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they
Yeah.
don't mean it and they're not having bad intentions, they just don't know.
Yeah, they just don't know. My girlfriend said it, when I first found out and was learning what it really is and how I've been living with it my entire life. Um, she said something about how it's her OCD that her closet is color coordinated, and I said, "That's actually not what OCD is. I thought that too, but there's a lot more to it. It's pretty debilitating." And she was like, "Oh," and I just left it at that. But there is really no nice way to, like,
I
tell
think that's a really
people.
kind way to put it though, the way you did.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
actually
if I've
not OCD. She was kinda like, "Huh?" Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's people have a lot to learn still.
Yep, I agree.
That's what we're doing here. That's what you're doing on your page, Alex. So, how can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have some YouTube videos that I've done with no CDs, so you can search me on YouTube or follow me on Instagram. That's where I post most of my stuff. And I've actually just started. I think it's called Substack, maybe, and I've started like writing on
Excellent.
there, which is cool because it gives you a lot more like information. You can write like actual articles, but I think Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
And that's Recover OCD, right?
Yes,
Go follow her, guys. She
thank you,
shares some good stuff.
thank you.
I was texting Liam saying, "Remind me to share the stuff that's coming up for me during this move," because I have been, long story short, I've been in the same house for 11 years. I've gotten really comfortable. I feel very safe here. We live in a beautiful street and neighborhood. And we are now in a position to potentially buy. And so where we can buy is in a different area, that I don't feel as safe. And if you've been here from the beginning, you will remember that one of my deepest fears is someone breaking in and killing me. And you laugh. You're going to laugh until it happens and you're going to feel really bad, Liam. Um, and, I would barricade the doors when my husband was out of town and because I was convinced someone was coming in or stalking me. And it became a real compulsion at night to secure all the doors the best way I knew how. Pretty ridiculous looking back now, but very real in my mind. And what's coming up for me is how am I supposed to know that where I'm moving is safe? How am I supposed to know that I'm not? So I downloaded a free app where you can see what pedophiles are in the area. No, no, Liam, it is alarming. You guys, the amount of registered pedophiles that come up in your area is very disturbing. And it is keeping me from finding a house because, look, you can say, okay, maybe this person was charged with assault and he was 18 and his girlfriend was 17 and the parents were pissed. Okay. But you can see what the charges are under their name, how long they served. I'm not doing it. I will pass up on my dream home, the perfect scenario, if there is a registered sex offender within a mile. So for me, it's like, okay, at what point do I stop the obsession of researching who is where? Is it better to not know? Is it better? No, I think you should know. If my neighbor is a registered sex offender, that's a big deal. I have 2 young kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah, depending on what he is registered for, because, right, some people end up on the sex offender registry because they were like urinating in public, right? And
Right, right. But it says it on there. So I'm like,
oh man, how many did you look
I'm
up where
getting,
you currently live?
yeah, I did. Okay, wait, this is a really okay, wait, this is kind of funny. So I'm in real time, I'm on the phone with my sister. She's the one who told me about the app, by the way. Thanks for that. So I and what happens is when you go on there, a bunch of red dots will come up,
Yes.
where they are.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in my living room and I look up the address. I can't breathe. I'm looking at the address that I'm in now, and the location is also red. So I'm zooming in. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's one, like, right here. Oh my gosh, he's, like, in my living room. Oh my gosh. Wait, that's just my location." I was like, "Wait, hold on. Why does it say he's on my street? Who is this person?" I just kept going closer and closer.
It was the
Uh,
pin. It was the
it was
pin
the
for your
pin. It was the pin. I cried. I laughed so hard.
people have been following along with your search for a new home, and
Uh-huh.
you had a home that was almost gonna happen, and then
I
you
was in
some
escrow.
stuff. Yeah.
I was in escrow, and look, I don't think that what I'm asking for, I'm willing to bend in some ways, right? And I live in LA. It's a very tough market out here, and it's very expensive. I'm very aware of the situation I'm in. However, um, when the inspections came back, that there was like leaks and plumbing issues and mold and no drainage and all these huge issues, I was like, I'm sorry, what? I had no idea the list would be this long, and so we could go back and forth and get credit and negotiate, but I was like, nope,
Well,
not for $1,000,000. I'm not doing this. I'm out."
Alicia and I have been texting during this, and then at one point you sent me a picture of a
Oh,
skeleton.
you
A
guys,
skeleton.
there was like a skeleton. Did not make this up. That was just the cherry on top. You could get someone out there and clean up the mess. That's not an issue, but it was like kind of a testament to how the run down the place was, right? It was like it was lipstick on a pig. They slapped some tile on and some paint. Um, there was a skeleton under the house. And I text Liam, I'm like, you thought I meant like a wait, you said we should probably report that to the police.
I was like, they might wanna bring this to the police if there are lots of skeletons under the house.
So I need to pick my poison. Do I wanna move in next door to a pedophile or skeletons under my house?
Well, as it turned out, she meant animal skeletons, but I didn't realize that, and my brain went right to human skeletons, and then you sent me a picture of the skeleton.
Guys, you gotta edit a photo of what I sent you and show people.
I'm gonna pull it up here. It was like a
It's a
huge
it's a
animal.
possum, but it looked like the alligator emoji, and I was like, "Yeah, when he said termites, alligators, and mice, that was under the house that I
Look at
almost
that. That is a legit large skeleton right
My
under the
question
house.
is did it get in and get trapped? Why did it die under there, you know?
Yeah. It probably was carbon monoxide poisoning, which I know is another one of your
That's a big one for me, you guys. I just don't know if the house hunting, if I'm cut out for it. I don't think it's gonna work out. I think we're gonna have to just buy, like, a motorhome and just drive around town. I mean, do you think wait, Costco has those tiny houses for $19,000 right now.
Oh my god, though, that's cool.
Yeah, you just have to buy the land for $1,000,000.
Yeah, well, that's right, yeah. So
I'm just
you
gonna drive to Boston and end up on your lawn. "Hey, neighbor, we're finally neighbors."
that'd be cute, I like that. Thanks for listening to another episode of the OCD Confessional. Be sure to follow this show so you get new episodes. You can subscribe to us on YouTube or find us on Instagram and TikTok at the OCD Confessional.